Good evening. Welcome to ShadowTrader Video Weekly for Sunday, February 26, 2012. I am very under the weather, as you can hear. So I'm going to try to not get too excited and just speak as clear as I can. I apologize. The S&P is basically struggling here, but I don't think it's at all negative. And I'm going to show you something on the profile in a second that'll tie that in. On the weeklies, you notice that on weekly SPX, this high is exactly 1370 and change, 1370.58, and this high here in the current week that just ended is 1368.92. Be aware that that could be the high. It doesn't have to go right to it to the penny. This could be considered a double top even if it's not. However, it should be obvious to you that even as we come up to this area, sellers are really just not able to get a foothold here. Notice that the market is just holding up real well, and at the same time, the other major averages have already blown through those resistances, right? So notice that this is much higher on a relative basis in terms of this resistance, right? The Dow has already gone far through, and if we look at NASDAQ Composite, right, also through that same area. So this would tell me that really sellers are not able to get a foothold yet here at all. One of the things that I look at in market profile over the longer term, a lot of times people email me and say, do you look at composite profile? What do you look at in terms of using market profile for longer term? Well, one of the things I'll look at is something called rotation factor. Basically, it's really simple. It's like as you mouse over the different days, the rotation factor is when you start with the second period. So in this case, it's the E period, right? The second 30-minute period. And you see, is the high of that period higher than the high of the first period? If it is, you assign it a +1. And if that low is higher than the low of the first period, you also assign it a +1. So therefore, that second period would get a score of 2. And you just keep going on and adding them. If the highs and lows are equal, it's a score of 0. Or rather, if the two highs are equal, right, it's a score of 0 for the high. If the low is equal, it's a 0 for the low. And obviously, if the low is lower, that's a -1. And if the high is lower, that's a -1. And then those get added up over the course of the day. And if you can look right here where it says RF and look at what the rotation factors have been recently. And on Friday, it was a +3, which is positive, but generally when it's a low number, it's not telling us much, right? And then Thursday, it was a relatively high number. It was 13. It was a +13. And then here it was a +2, and then here it's a -1. So you can see that not a lot is happening, and also I like to look at what's going on with value in terms of overlapping, or is it making a clean break higher? And you can see, look, the points of control, they're migrating around on a very just few handles away from each other. Point of control, point of control, point of control, couple points higher, and then Friday higher. So value is just kind of moving around and not really doing much of anything. So the only thing I can tell you going forward is that when value develops for a long time in one area and then the buyers are not rewarded for it, right? You can imagine that a lot of trade has changed hands here at these levels. If people are not being rewarded for it, the weaker hands may sell. And when the weaker hands sell, that's what's called a liquidation break, and that's when you get those hard moves off the open where it just goes down hard, and then you have to assess the situation and see. Market internals will tell you if that's the type of market that's going to follow through and keep going lower into the afternoon. If the market internals are decent and not really bearish, then it's probably just a liquidation break. You can think of it as the weaker hands that are just waiting for the bell to open and saying, okay, you know what? If I don't get higher prices today, I'm out. And those are the ones that sell. And very often, when that break occurs, it'll just come down to a prior period's point of control, or maybe a low volume node, a low volume area, and that'll also be a key to tell you that essentially, that selling really wasn't worth much. I was just taking a few players out of the market. Okay, so basically, just to recap, everything seems to be bullish to me here. I think it's still kind of in a buy the pullback situation. I'm excited to announce that the blog and forum is coming really soon. I would say within 2 weeks. We have about 60% of it constructed on the site. It's going to be at ShadowTrader.net. I will be blogging there along with a lot of our ShadowTrader.net people, such as Blake Young, Dan Sheehy, Brad Agunis, etc. And then we'll also have a forum where you guys are going to be able to interact with each other and with us, and post threads, and we'll get a dialogue going on whatever you like. So we're looking forward to that. All right, check you guys next week. On behalf of myself and the entire ShadowTrader team here in beautiful Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, I wish you good trading and good night.